Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles released their official depth chart heading into the 2023 season. Obviously, a massive matchup, week one, against the LSU Tigers. And this is a team that we've talked a ton about on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, a team that I'm extremely high on. And before we even get into who's in the ones and the twos, the biggest takeaway for me when you finally get the whole depth chart out in front of you is not only the talent, like you have first round NFL talent, guys like Jared Verse, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jordan Travis, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. My bigger takeaway is how deep this team is. I mean, this goes 1, 2, 3 levels of most positions of depth that is really good for Florida State when you have national title aspirations, which I don't think is crazy. I've kind of repeatedly said this is a Florida State team that can win it all this year. You got to have the depth. And last year, as much talent as that team had last year, Johnny Wilson, Jared Verse, Jordan Travis, all of those guys, the depth wasn't quite there. And when you saw some guys go down with injury, like that's when Florida State started dropping some games. You don't have that leeway. You have to have that depth. Mike Norvell did just such a good job in the transfer portal, not only adding like starting level talent, but also adding a ton of depth to this team. And this is about as talented and as deep of a Florida State team as we've seen in a really long time. And partially the reason why I think this Florida State team is one of the best teams in the country and certainly a national title contender. Now, before we get into the ones and twos and kind of some takeaways with the oars, I just want to say to the Florida State fans, like, cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. This is one of the more fun teams for me to talk about, dive into. We've done a ton of work on this Florida State team. The amount of support you guys have shown truly does mean a lot. So if you enjoy the content, you want to support the boys, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, it's awesome. And the best part about doing this is hearing you guys in the comment section, chopping it up about football with you guys. You guys teach me a lot. So appreciate you guys. Let me know in the comment section what you guys are your biggest takeaways from this official depth chart. And without further ado, let's get into this depth chart. Jordan Travis, quarterback one, breaking news. Obviously, no surprise there. I do really like Trey Benson and Lawrence Tuafili, who I feel like we haven't talked enough about. I've talked so much about Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, and what this wide receiver room can be. We haven't really highlighted that this is one of the better running back rooms in the whole entire country. And as a Michigan fan, many of you guys know, a Blake Corum guy, I think there's a really strong argument that Trey Benson might be the best running back in all of college football. And then you balance him out with one of the more exciting players on this roster in Lawrence Tuafili. You got the Thunder, Lightning, a really good running back room that when you actually see it on paper, you're like, yeah, they're loaded, even though they lose Trayshawn Moore. This is a really, really good running back room. I know some of you guys are Rodney Hill fans as well. Now, getting into the wide receiver position, obviously no surprise, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, but the depth is so much there. Like Hakeem Williams, 5-star freshman, he's running with your three deeps. Portier is a guy that you guys have been hyping up in the comment section. My biggest takeaway, Destin Hill and Winston Wright Jr. getting that OR designation. And what you guys know, I'm a Winston Wright Jr. guy. Coming over from West Virginia, obviously the car accident. I think he balances out Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman really well. But seeing Destin Hill in there as a true freshman, I know he's a little older than a true freshman. He's been a guy that, as a Florida State pseudo fan here, I'm reading the fall practice notes pretty religiously, and you keep seeing Destin Hill's name. And that's really exciting because that was one thing that when Pittman left, it was like, okay, you got Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman. You have some elite boundary receivers. Who's going to be that guy working the middle of the field, that shorter intermediate route tree that can get open for Jordan Travis? You got two guys with the OR designation that they feel comfortable trotting out with that first-team offense. And I think for Florida State fans, it's a really good sign. Tight end position, absolutely loaded. This is a group that, again, I feel like gets under-talked about because of the wide receiver room. Kyle Morlock, Jaheim Bell, two guys that are matchup nightmares for a couple different reasons. Really, really excited to see this offense use these guys as just matchup nightmares, because when you look at the pass catcher group as a whole, and this is one of the things that, like, shout out Mike Norvell, did such a good job turning this group around. You look back 2 years ago, this wide receiver room was one of the worst in the ACC. In 2 years now, one of the best in the country, not just ACC, probably the best in the country, or one of the best in the country. These pass catchers, absolutely loaded. My biggest takeaway, I think, of all the depth chart, though, is the offensive line. And I know the oars are a good thing, in my opinion, because what does that tell you? It tells you Mike Norvell, Alex Ack, the guy, they're really comfortable with a bunch of different guys on the offensive line. And that was a group last year that got better, but when the injuries started happening, like it wasn't the best unit ever. And you want Jordan Travis to have time in the pocket. You want to establish that run game. Robert Scott Jr., I think legit NFL talent at left tackle. Maurice Smith, Casey Roddick. Keandre Jones is another guy that, I mean, that's a quality backup you're talking about. And then you see the oars, right? Jeremiah Byers coming from UTEP in the portal with an oar with Bless Harris telling me, like, they're comfortable with 3 tackles right now. Bless Harris, Robert Scott Jr., and Jeremiah Byers. And if you can go into a season comfortable with 8 to 9 offensive linemen, that's kind of where you want to be. And I think that is kind of where Florida State is at. And they got a couple guys like Bless Harris who can play on both sides of the line, both offensive, both left tackle and both right tackle. I think Florida State is in a really good spot in terms of their depth on the offensive line that you take a look back 12 months ago, probably not as good of a spot in terms of the depth of this unit. That's, again, why we're so high on Florida State heading into that 2023 season. Looking over at the defense, like, you're going to see some freshmen that are making this list, but it starts up front. And this is a group that with Jared Verse, Patrick Payton, and you're talking about Gilbert Edmond, who came in from South Carolina, was a starter for South Carolina. I believe he had 7.5 sacks in SEC play last year. He's running with the 2s. You talk about depth on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Like, that is massive. Jared Verse, Patrick Payton, Gilbert Edmond, really, really good edge rusher, pass rusher duo. And then you look inside, Braden Fisk, and then Fabian Lovett and Joshua Farmer getting the oar. I mean, Fabian Lovett, I kind of expect to be trotting out with that first team defense along Braden Fisk. But again, Joshua Farmer getting that oar tells me they're very comfortable having Joshua Farmer out there. Dennis Briggs and Daniel Lyons played really good football. Malcolm Ray had probably thrown there as well. It's a group that, again, deep. They go 1, 2, 3 levels of depth on the inside, and that's so important. We talk about why Florida State, or why I kind of use this example a lot. Georgia is so good, not only because they have like first-round talent, like guys like Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett, Patrick Payton, who I think Patrick Payton is just a budding superstar, but they also have like depth. Like Dennis Briggs, Joshua Farmer, Malcolm Ray, those are guys that probably could find their ways on the NFL rosters over the next couple of years, and those guys are in your 2 to 3 deep. It's telling me, like, this is a team that's why it's a national title contending team, because of that depth. Going to the linebacker room, Tatum Bethune, I think, is going to be kind of an all-ACC guy, stalwart linebacker. Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy. I really like Kalen DeLoach. I like both of them, quite frankly. So you got some nice depth at the linebacker spot. And I guess the biggest question mark on the defense was, how is that secondary going to shake out? Because there were some rumors that Fentrell Cypress was kind of in a battle for a starting spot at that cornerback role. I never really bought into it. I think it was more of, hey, you're not just going to transfer Florida State and immediately expect to start. Having Fentrell Cypress listed as a starter, that tells me personally, like, he's back, like, he's going to be a dude. And he's coming from Virginia, 12 passes defended last year, all ACC guy. Him coming over, getting that starting spot, I would expect Fentrell Cypress to be that guy. And then you look in the back end, I kind of want to talk about some guys that, yes, Akeem Dent, really like his game. I wouldn't be surprised if you see guys like Conrad Hussey, KJ Kirkland, and Jones in the back end as freshmen. You're hearing really good things about what they bring to the table. So this is a Florida State team that you look at the overall depth chart, and this is something, I mean, like 1 through 85, this is a really talented group, but when you get into the depth chart, it's a team that not only has that talent at the first level, it's one of the most talented rosters that we see in the country in terms of guys that will be on all ACC teams, all American teams, NFL draft picks, but it's also a team that, like, if you have a guy go down or you need to rotate some guys in and out, like Florida State, you got to be feeling really good about where this team is from an overall depth standpoint as well. I feel like I've said depth probably like 100, 150 times, so I apologize for that. But that is really the reason why I'm so high on Florida State. Really excited for the season. Again, we're going to find out a lot about this team Sunday night against LSU. Cannot wait for that game. Florida State fans, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with us, and we'll talk to y'all later.